Ragnarok Ascended is finally here, and with it comes a huge lineup of creatures to tame. In this video, I'll be ranking the top 10 creatures on the new map, as well as telling you everything you need to know about taming and using these amazing creatures. Paid DLC creatures like the Veilwind and Drakeling won't be included, but everything else is fair game. Drop a comment with your favorite creature on Ragnarok, and without further ado, let's get into it. At number 10, I have the Equus. The Equus saddle is unlocked at level 20, but it is an optional saddle. You can ride it without the saddle. Its preferred food is simple kibble, followed by rock carrots, crops, and then metro berries. On screen now you can see the entire spawn map for the Equus. It spawns on all the new islands, but it's most common in the Highlands and in the top right island that just got added. The reason the Equus is so good on Ragnarok is that it's the best choice for early game mobility and is the best choice for a lot of utility in the early game. If you spawn in the Highlands, which I recommend, I think is the best spot to spawn on the map, there's a ton of rock carrots all over the floor in the Highlands that you can pick right out of the ground and use to tame Equus. It's really convenient and it gets you a high taming effectiveness Equus, which is one of the strongest tames in the early game. The way you should use this is as an early game pack mule. You can use the saddle as a mortar and pestle, and you can use it to go knock out a Pteranodon, which you can then go use to suicide into the Wyvern Trench to get an egg. If you play the early game in the way I'm describing, you can use the Equus to go easily kill the Carbonemys and Trikes required to get the carrots in for the Pteranodon saddle, knock out the Pteranodon, use the Pteranodon to go get the Wyvern eggs, and then use the Equus sparingly throughout the rest of the game to go farm berries if you need it, or to go use lassos, which are super useful. The Equus is always great, but the easy accessibility for both finding it and the rock carrots required to tame it make it a really great choice on Ragnarok especially. At number 9, I have the Dino, and you might think this is too low, but I do have a reason for it not being super high. The Dino saddles at level 74, it prefers superior kibble, followed by raw mutton, raw prime meat, and is a passive tame just like the Equus. The Dino is only really harder because you need to wait for its mouth to open and you need to do it in the swamp, which is a pretty dangerous biome comparatively to the Highlands. With all that being said though, the effort is still worth putting in for the Dino. As you can see on screen, the Dino spawns in 3 areas on the map, in both swamp biomes and the desert river. In my opinion, the desert river is by far the best choice for taming the Dino. It's a much safer area, you have a lot more visibility, and there's more land for you to work with for you to go onto the side and wait for it to open its mouth. There's a couple reasons using the Dino on Ragnarok is really good. First of all, to get the artifact of the Devourer, you need to go down into the Tuzo Trench, and that is really dangerous on a non-strong underwater creature. The Dino is easily the best choice on this map in terms of taming something super strong to go deep underwater to kill Tuzos. You also need Tuzo tentacles for the boss fight, and if you're looking to fight the boss with Dino, that's a pretty good choice. The sheer stats on this thing, especially when you use the Gigabyte on it, is just ridiculously strong regardless of the boss you're fighting. I do prefer to have higher movement speed options for this boss fight specifically. I think having the ability to chase around the dragon as it flies over you, especially considering you get stuck up with ice worms a lot of the time during the fight, is a lot better, but the Dino is pretty much always a great pick just because of how strong it is. At number 8, I have the Theory, which gets its saddle unlocked at level 69, prefers exceptional kibble, followed by Archelon algae, crops, and metro berries, and is a basic knockout tame. It spawns in a lot of the jungle regions in the northwest of the map, and it also spawns on the south side of the canyon on the west, which is pretty easy to see. It's a little bit harder to find in the jungle, but on this canyon area, it's super easy to find these. The Therizino is great for a couple reasons, and it's just about the same as every other map. You can use it for the boss fight, is definitely a good choice there. It's incredibly strong in terms of stats, so you can just use it to go kill a ton of stuff on the map. And it's really good for farming a wide variety of different resources because you can level both delicate and power harvesting on it for different types of farming. On screen now you can see every single different resource the Therizino can farm. It's really just crazy how good this thing is and how underrated it is. It's basically a top 10 choice for any map where it's available. At number 7 I have the Woolly Rhino, and the saddle unlocks at level 53 for this thing. The preferred food for it is superior kibble, followed by Archelon algae, crops, and metro berries, and it's a basic knockout tame. It spawns primarily in the Murder Snow, which is obviously a pretty inconvenient spot. It's extremely cold there. So you either want to go on the outskirts of that biome so you can knock it out, give it all it needs, and then leave the biome pretty quickly, or just tame it on the other snow peak that it spawns on more rarely. The Rhino is really good for one simple reason: damage. This thing does a ridiculous amount of damage, especially when it's fully charged, and it has a decent health pool as well, so it makes it one of the best choices for the boss fight on this map. I've seen a lot of people saying the Bison is the new best choice, and that may be true just because of the great pack buff it gets, but it doesn't do anywhere near as much damage as the Rhino. The Rhino was, in my opinion, the best choice for the old arena boss fight, but it's still a very solid choice for the new fight. And it also has one big perk over every other option for the boss fight as well: the Rhino is way more fun to use. At number 6 I have the Wyvern. The Wyvern doesn't come with a saddle, and you can find eggs for it in 2 different locations on the map, unless you're talking about the Ice Wyvern, which has totally different locations. On screen now you can see the spawn regions for the Fire, Poison, and Lightning Wyvern trenches. If you're new to the map, basically all you have to do is go steal the eggs, and then after you steal the eggs and get away from the wyverns that attack you, you just need to go and put the egg down, incubate it, and then raise the baby by feeding it milk from either the bison or the wyvern. If you're looking for the ice wyverns, they are a totally different location. They spawn in all the snow biomes. On screen now you can see the coordinates to a couple of the ice wyvern egg locations, but they do spawn in other areas. For example, in the other two snow regions, they spawn on the peaks of mountains. They're very easy to see once you're there. They used to be much harder to get in Ark Evolved because they only spawned in the murder snow, but now they do spawn in the easier areas, which is nice. Wyverns are great for a couple of reasons, but they're basically high stat, fast flying, with cool breath attack behemoths in the air. They're also really easily accessible, especially the fire, poison, and lightning wyverns if you know what you're doing. The easiest way to get them is just by far to go grab an egg on a low level Pteranodon, fly out, and then fly under the legs of a Bronto to bait the wyverns into the Bronto. So if you get them early in the game, they're even better than they already were. The only reason they're number 7 instead of being much higher is because now that griffins are breedable, the wyvern is simply the second best option on the map in terms of flyers. They're just not as good as griffins, at least right now. For my testing in terms of stat comparisons, the griffin wins in speed. The tankiness is pretty comparable now. The melee damage on the griffin is much better if you use the dive bomb effectively. And the wyverns are able to grab bigger creatures. They have better stamina in general, and they have the breath attack, but I just think the griffin is much better, especially for Ragnarok, which is such a big map. The speed is much more important. Another important thing to note here is that a good griffin player will literally never die to a wyvern. They usually will kill the wyvern because it's simply impossible for a wyvern to hit a griffin rider who knows what they're doing. I think once they nerf the griffin's stats a bit, the wyvern will be higher on this list, but for right now, it's just the second best choice on the map in terms of flyers. I prefer using the lightning wyvern, but there is pretty good reason to use all 4 depending on the mode you're playing. Poison wyverns in PvE are pretty bad. Ice wyverns and fire wyverns in PvP are pretty bad, but they're all useful for something. Before I get into the top 5, let's quickly go through some honorable mentions. The first 2, as always, are the Anki and the RG. They're just hard to rank. They're always really useful. On this map specifically, the RG isn't as good as other maps because the Karkinos exists, but it's still a great choice for early game and mid game farming. The Anki prefers regular kibble, Archelon algae, crops, and then Mejo berries, and gets its saddle at level 36. And the RG gets its saddle at level 62, while preferring superior kibble, raw mutton, and then raw prime meat. You can see the spawn regions for both creatures right now on the map. It's really not super hard to find either. They're very common, and they're good for the exact same reason as they usually are. Farming metal is always important with the Anki, and the RG is just a great creature. One more honorable mention is the Megalania. You get the saddle for the Megalania at level 73. It prefers extraordinary kibble, followed by raw mutton and raw prime meat. And the spawn location is in the charcoal beaches at the top of the map right here. I know there's another spawn region on the south there. Don't go there. Go to the top right of the map for this. These spawn on the beach here, and they're really easy to tame. The reason it's great is because the caves on Ragnarok are easily the toughest objective on the map, and Megalania's climbing on the ceiling to avoid a lot of the traps is super valuable. The reason it's only an honorable mention is because I think there is one creature that's just simply better at this job, but it's also a good option. It's also by far the most accessible on Ragnarok compared to any map in the game. There's so many on this beach, and this is by far the easiest spot in the game to tame Megalania, so it's worth checking out. At number 5, I have the Thylacoleo, which has the saddle unlock at level 51, prefers extraordinary kibble, cooked lamb chops, and then cooked prime meat. On screen now you can see the spawn locations for it. They spawn in the southwest island regions and in the redwoods in the top right. It's far easier to tame these on the southwest islands than it is in the redwoods. The reason for this is because in the redwoods it sits on trees and can jump you, and the redwoods is generally a really dangerous area. In the bottom left islands, it doesn't sit on any trees, so it's just running around on the floor. This makes it really easy to knock out, and the surrounding area is much safer, so the tame is a much more simple process, and they spawn more in the bottom left than they do in the top right. The reason why it's great is similar to the Megalania. This is just the best caving creature option on the map by a pretty decent margin. There's not enough underwater portions in the caves here to justify the Baryonyx over the Thylacoleo. I think the Thylacoleo's better jumping ability than the Baryonyx, and its really high stats makes it a really great choice for most of the caves on this map. At number 4, I have the only underwater creature in this video, and it's the anglerfish. The anglerfish doesn't have a saddle. It prefers regular kibble, followed by raw mutton and raw prime meat, and it's a simple knockout tame. It spawns all around the map in the underwater areas, but in my experience, it spawns most commonly on the west side of the map. They are a bit deeper down in the water than your average Megalodon or Basilosaurus, but they're not too far down, so they're not super difficult to get in the early game. The reason the angler is so good is because it farms a ridiculous amount of silica and black pearls. Ragnarok notoriously has a ridiculous amount of these resources, so using the angler just gets so much more value out of it. This map also spawns a lot less underwater creatures than other maps in the game, so you're a lot safer to leave the angler around, and there's no strictly underwater cave objectives, so the angler being weak doesn't really hold you back. It also has the benefit of being a really fast swimmer, which is helpful on a map that's so big. As you may have guessed from my earlier comments during the RG section, the Karkinos is number 3. The Karkino saddle is unlocked at level 65. You have to knock it out by using a cannon or a catapult, and it prefers exceptional kibble followed by spoiled meat. The Karkino spawns in 2 areas for my testing. It spawns in the southmost island in the cove area, as well as in the entirety of the carnivorous caverns, which is by far the best spot to get these on the map. The only other spot on the map to get them is in the underwater cave to the north of Blue Ob, but this is really inconvenient and out of the way. The reason it's great is the exact same reason it's good on other maps. It's really excellent for farming. The way you use this is you basically pick up creatures. Even if they're fully encumbered and you can't move, you can throw the farming creature at the next set of resources. For example, let's say you're doing a metal run with an Anki and you have an encumbered Anki and it has way too much weight. You can simply pick it up with the Karkinos, throw it to the next set of metal rocks, and then go over there with the Karkinos by jumping over. The Karkinos also has really good stats, and it's pretty maneuverable, especially with the giant jump it gets. So it's just a really useful creature, and it's super fun to use. Easily one of the best on this map. One more thing I should mention is they became breedable pretty recently, which makes them even better. At number 2, I have the Giant Bison. The Giant Bison saddle is unlocked at level 50, and its preferred food is superior kibble, followed by algae, crops, and mejo berries, and it's a basic knockout tame. The bison spawn all over the Highland biome, as well as the new Highland Island up to the top right, and on the new Redwoods Island to the right of Red Ob. They spawn pretty commonly in some of the mountain regions as well, and they do spawn on the new Swamp Island out into the middle left of the map, but I haven't really seen that many on the left island from my personal testing. I would definitely stick to just looking for them in the Highlands area. They're very easy to tame there, especially if you're ready to deal with the aggressive nature of them. The biggest benefits for the bison is it has great stats. It has a charge, which makes it move really quickly. It has a jump as well, which makes it super maneuverable. It has a stance swap, which basically puts its head up or down, which gives its special attack either a jump when its head is up, or a fling of an enemy creature up into the air when its head is down. Both of these special attacks do scale with charge speed. And it also gets a ridiculous +6 pack buff, which gives it a 30% buff to melee damage and damage resistance in a pack of 7 or more. The other obvious utility for the bison that we all know about is that it gives you milk. Basically, whenever your bison breed, the female after having the baby will produce milk in a radial menu for you to grab every hour or so. This milk is useful for raising wyverns. It makes raising wyverns far easier than going to knock out a wyvern. And the milk also gives you all the normal benefits milk gives you. This is something that a lot of people don't know about, but there's actually a ton of good benefits of carrying milk around with you. It does spoil pretty quickly, but if you bring it to something like a cave where you can get rabies, it's super useful. Just an incredible creature with the good stats and the insane pack buff. They're also great for the boss fight, and this boss fight is pretty tough, so that's really saying something. Really great addition to the game. At number 1, this should really be no surprise, it's the Griffin. The Griffin doesn't get a saddle, and this is basically the only downside for the creature. It prefers extraordinary kibble, followed by raw mutton and raw prime meat, and it's a basic knockout tame. It spawns all around the Highland, but for my testing, it spawns most commonly near Green Ob below the canyon. Most notably at 51.5, 36.8, this area specifically has a ton of griffins. The Griffin is just really strong. Even before you're able to breed it and get the extra 30% buffs from the imprinting bonus, this thing was one of the best creatures on the map. It's incredibly maneuverable because it's able to go left, right, up, and down with movement keys. It's the fastest by far if you use the diving mechanic properly. It does incredible damage and completely counters every other flyer in the game if you use it properly for PvP fighting. It has great stats in general. You're able to use weapons while you're on the back of it, and it's a 2-seater, which is just ridiculously strong. And on Ragnarok especially, where there's a ton of benefit in flying around the map to farm resources from different areas, having a Griffin to quickly travel to those areas and farm stuff by hand is super useful. Especially because the stuff you're farming by hand, like cementing paste from all the insane amounts of beaver dams, is very light, so the not fantastic weight stat of the Griffin doesn't really matter. And the fact that it can't carry large creatures also doesn't really matter for this map specifically. It's just an already amazing creature that got 30% better with the new update. They did nerf the stats just a little bit on the Griffin after they added the imprinting, but it didn't nerf it nearly enough to make it actually balanced to where it used to be. And in my opinion, that makes it far and away the best creature in the entire map. Well, that's my list for the best creatures on Ragnarok Ascended. If you enjoyed this video, I guarantee you that you'll enjoy the video linked on screen now, where I cover the 50 biggest new features inside of Ragnarok Ascended. See you there. Peace.